My name is Claire Monroe. I'm 68 years old, a widow, and I live alone in a small townhouse just outside Portland. This morning, I sat in my car in the parking lot of Wells Fargo and watched through the windshield as the teller behind the glass confirmed the stop payment. $200,000. Gone in 15 minutes. I should have felt something more dramatic. Relief, maybe. Or triumph. But mostly, I felt cold. My fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, numb even with the early summer sun heating the dashboard. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was what it represented. 40 years of scraped knees, skipped meals, second jobs, and late-night worry. All of it funneled into one moment. And that moment turned its back on me. Ethan, my only son, had thrown me out of his wedding rehearsal last night. Not with a scene. Not loudly. That would have been too vulgar for Camille's family. No, it was quiet. Polite. Packaged in the same honeyed tone they used to tell waitstaff there's a hair in the risotto. I embarrassed him. That was the word he used. You embarrassed me, Mom. I replayed it in my mind as I watched a couple walk out of the bank holding hands. Maybe they were newlyweds. Or maybe they were just lucky enough to still want to hold hands in public. The woman had a soft scarf tied around her hair and was laughing at something he said. I turned away. When did Ethan stop finding me funny? When did my voice become a liability? I still remember his little hand in mine at the hospital. He was born in early spring, a quiet, blinking baby with an unexpected head of dark hair. Tom held him first. I remember thinking, this is the beginning. I'll do whatever it takes. And I did. I gave up my last year at the Design Institute. Picked up shifts at a bakery. Then opened my own tiny cafe when Ethan turned 5. Hazel Brew. We served breakfast sandwiches and drip coffee to the same neighborhood faces for over 30 years. That place raised us. It paid for Ethan's braces, his cleats, his textbooks. And now, apparently, it was a source of shame. He didn't want me to talk about it at the wedding. That was the first request. Don't mention the cafe, Mom. Just say you're retired. It's cleaner. Camille's parents are, well, particular. Particular. That's one way to put it. What do you say when your child asks you to erase yourself? Not out of malice. That's the thing. It's worse. It's out of calculation. Yesterday was supposed to be simple. I showed up to the rehearsal in my new olive dress, the one with the scalloped sleeves I splurged on at a boutique near the waterfront. I even had my nails done, first time in years. Lena, my niece's daughter, said I looked elegant. I felt prepared. Nervous, but proud. Until Ethan pulled me aside near the back hallway of the venue. That's where it happened. Near the janitor's closet, as the quartet warmed up inside. You embarrassed me. In front of Camille's family. How? I'd asked, stunned. I hadn't even spoken much. It's the way you keep trying to talk to everyone, like it's some backyard barbecue. This is formal, Mom. Not everyone wants to hear about your bakery stories. I think that's when the numbness started. The slow freeze that crept into my arms and settled in my chest. He went on. They think it's better if you just come to the ceremony. Maybe skip the dinner. It'll be long. You'll be tired. I wasn't tired. I was erased. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. I got in my car. Drove home. Took off the dress. Hung it back up. Then sat at my kitchen table in the silence that follows betrayal. It's not a loud silence. Not angry. Just still. Like the breath right before you cry. You ever had that moment? When someone you love makes it clear you're no longer invited to their joy? It's a kind of death, isn't it? This morning, I looked at my checkbook. Check 1,189. $200,000. Payment for a wedding I was no longer welcome at. Payment for love I wasn't allowed to show. So I called the bank. 15 minutes. That's how long it took to undo years of yes. And now, here I sit. The radio humming low. My hands finally warm again. And for the first time in a long time, my spine straightens without effort. Because something shifted in me. And it's not over. You'll want to hear what happened next. In 1984, I was 25, and 2 months away from finishing my degree in interior design at a small college in Bend, Oregon. Back then, I wore my hair short, kept a sketchpad in my bag, and believed that with just a little grit, I could build a life that looked nothing like the one I came from. Then I found out I was pregnant. I still remember the sound the plastic test made when I dropped it on the bathroom tile. Like a cheap coin hitting ceramic. I stood there staring at it, shirt half buttoned, class already halfway through, the world tilting just slightly. You never think that one line, or two, will change the entire shape of your life. Tom was working as a mechanic in a shop off Division Street. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't angry. He held me that night in our tiny studio apartment and said, "We'll figure it out, Claire. You can go back to school later." That was the plan. Always later. But morning sickness hit hard. I couldn't sit through lectures without throwing up. My part-time waitressing shifts became impossible. My energy shrank to the size of a raisin. By my 3rd trimester, I was out of school and folding laundry at my sister's house to make a little cash. Tom worked long days. Summer was good for business. People fixed their cars before long drives or after fender benders. But when winter came, the money slowed. We stretched canned soup, skipped movies, and told ourselves it was normal. Part of the climb. Ethan was born in April. 7 pounds even. A soft, quiet baby who barely cried. He had Tom's chin and my grandmother's eyes. The nurse placed him on my chest and I remember thinking, I'll never be first again. And I was okay with that. I really was. We brought him home to a 1-bedroom rental that smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner. I taped postcards of Italy and Greece above the crib. Dreams I'd once had, now just color on a wall. When Ethan turned 1, I started baking muffins out of our kitchen to sell at Tom's shop. The mechanics loved them. Then I added coffee. Then sandwiches. By the time Ethan was 3, I was taking orders from 3 local offices. It was chaotic. Burnt crusts, spilled flour, late deliveries. But people came back. They liked the way I remembered their orders. The way I made cinnamon toast feel like comfort. We rented a corner storefront near 9th and Maple. Hazel Brew. I painted the sign myself. Pale green letters on cream wood. The opening day, I wore a thrifted dress and prayed the espresso machine wouldn't explode. Ethan sat on a stool behind the counter with his juice box, watching cartoons on a handheld DVD player. For a while, it worked. The cafe grew. I worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, sometimes more. My hands always smelled like ground beans and citrus cleaner. My back ached in ways I didn't have time to name. But Ethan had new shoes. He went to school with a packed lunch and came home to grilled cheese. I bought him second-hand comic books and watched him build entire universes on our living room floor. One night when he was 6, I was tucking him into bed. He looked at my fingers and said, "Why do your hands have those cracks?" I told him, "Because they're making something strong for us." I meant it. Every burn, every blister, every overtime order felt like an investment in our life together. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Not really. Over the years, the college sent me 2 letters. "We welcome returning students," they said. They offered flexible schedules, re-entry counselors. I filed both letters in a drawer and never called back. The first time was the year Ethan needed braces. The second, when he made the soccer team and we had to buy gear. Helmet, shin guards, team jacket. He wanted to look like the others. I wanted him to blend in. To never feel lesser. I don't think he ever knew what I gave up to make that happen. I don't think he was supposed to. Tom passed away the year Ethan graduated college. He was only 49. A heart attack, sudden, on a job site in the middle of June. The heat had been brutal that week. I got the call while prepping a catering order. I remember the plastic container of egg salad slipping from my hands and hitting the floor. Just like that, he was gone. The insurance helped. A bit. Enough to keep things stable. I paid for Ethan's apartment for 6 months. Covered therapy sessions. Let him come home when the grief overwhelmed him. He was 22, working his first job, barely a man but expected to be one. One night, he cried into my shoulder like he had when he was 5. "You're all I have left, Mom," he said. And I meant it when I whispered back, "You're all I need." I thought I'd done everything right. Sacrificed at every fork in the road. Gave when I should have kept. Pushed when I should have paused. But that's the thing about motherhood. You never know which moments mattered. And which ones were just noise. Looking back now, I wonder. Did I ever teach him what boundaries looked like? Or was I too busy proving my love through endless giving? Because that kind of love, boundless, unquestioned, unreciprocated, it feels noble at first. Until it doesn't. Until you realize you weren't just pouring from your own cup. You were letting them break it, piece by piece, and asking for nothing but thanks. And sometimes, not even that. But I wasn't ready to see it back then. Not yet. That moment would come. Soon. 3 years ago, Ethan met Camille at some tech networking event downtown. She worked in finance, but the kind that doesn't sound real. Asset strategies. Market repositioning. Buzzwords that land better in boardrooms than in kitchens like mine. He called me 2 weeks after they started dating. Said he wanted me to meet her. I was excited, honestly. I thought it meant something serious. We agreed to meet at a cafe near the waterfront. Not Hazel Brew. Not my place. I should have known. The cafe was modern and sterile, all concrete counters and Edison bulbs, with a menu printed in a minimalist font I had to squint to read. Camille was already seated when I arrived, tapping her phone with one perfectly manicured finger. Her nails were the color of bone china. When Ethan introduced us, she gave me a polite smile and reached out a hand like she was greeting a client. It was soft. Too soft. No warmth, no grip. Just protocol. "Nice to finally meet you," she said. Her eyes didn't match her words. They were scanning the room, the people, the exits. Ethan ordered us drinks. I asked for a latte. Camille got some cold brew with oat milk and lavender syrup. I remember it because she wrinkled her nose after the first sip, but kept drinking anyway. Like she couldn't admit it was too bitter. I tried to make conversation. Asked about her work, her family, her hobbies. She answered every question like she was filling out a form. Quick. Polished. Safe. And when she asked about me, it wasn't really a question. "So you run a little coffee place?" Little. It wasn't cruel. Just careless. I smiled and told her yes. For over 30 years now. It's been a good life. Let me raise Ethan. Let me stay independent. Ethan jumped in then. Mom's shop actually has contracts with a few hotels. Linens, breakfast catering. He said it fast, like he was trying to prove something. His voice had that tight edge he gets when he's anxious to please. She nodded, barely. After they left, I sat at that table for a while, holding the last sip of coffee in my mouth. It had gone cold. I couldn't taste anything but lavender. Back in the parking lot, Ethan hugged me quickly, already glancing at his phone. "She's great, right?" he asked. I said she seemed nice. "Her family's different from us," he added. Like he was testing how much I could hear without flinching. "Different how?" He hesitated. Her dad's a senior partner at some banking firm. Real successful. They have a lake house. Expectations, you know. He said it like a warning wrapped in an apology. At the time, I brushed it off. I told myself Ethan was just trying to find his footing in a new world. I didn't want to believe the foundation between us was shifting. But it was. The engagement came quickly. Too quickly, if you ask me. A ring the size of a peppermint. Ethan said he picked it, but I recognized the style. Camille. Elegant. Loud in its silence. He didn't propose at our home. Didn't celebrate with family. They made an Instagram post instead. I found out like everyone else. That should have been my first sign. But love makes you excuse things. Especially the kind of love that built itself on bedtime stories and sack lunches. The first time I saw Camille's parents was at their country club. They hosted the engagement party there. Ethan told me it was catered, and they didn't need me to bring anything. Not even my potato salad. That stung more than it should have. The night of the party, I wore the black dress I had saved from Tom's funeral. It was simple, clean. I added a red scarf for color. I remember walking in and instantly feeling out of place. Crystal chandeliers. Waiters in tuxedos. A violinist playing something I couldn't name. Camille introduced me as Ethan's mother. No name. Just the role. All night, I was surrounded by strangers in designer shoes, talking about markets, summer homes, and ski trips. No one asked about me. No one cared. I stood near the bar, sipping fizzy water, pretending it was enough. Halfway through, Ethan pulled me aside. Asked if I could avoid mentioning the check I wrote to help cover costs. Camille's parents want to feel like they hosted the whole thing, he said. It's an image thing. An image thing. That's when I realized my presence was welcome, but only if I stayed quiet. The money was accepted. But my story wasn't. It happened again at the bridal shower. Or rather, didn't happen. I wasn't invited. Camille said it was just a small thing with friends. I saw the pictures later online. Her mother, her sisters, glasses of champagne, boutique gift bags. They wore matching robes in a rented garden. I wasn't even a footnote. You understand, right? Ethan said later. You're always busy at the cafe. We didn't want to stress you out. I smiled. Nodded. Went home and cleaned the espresso machine twice. Then came the rehearsal dinner. Also, intimate. Also excluding me. Bit by bit, I was being erased. Not by force. By omission. The most painful kind. The kind you can almost believe is accidental. Almost. One night, as I was wiping down tables at the cafe, I stopped and looked around. The clock ticked above the register. The smell of cinnamon still lingered from the morning batch of rolls. It was quiet. Peaceful. Familiar. And suddenly, it felt like a ghost town. A place I had built, full of memories Ethan no longer seemed to value. I used to think that if you give someone everything, they'll love you more. But maybe love doesn't grow that way. Maybe it grows when someone sees you fully, not just what you give. The worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was realizing that I let it happen. That I'd been trading silence for proximity, hoping it would keep me close. But proximity without presence is just a hollow thing. And I was starting to feel like an echo. A memory they didn't want, but couldn't quite delete. Not yet. The signs were there. But I didn't want to see them. At first, it was small things. Tiny adjustments. A shift in how Ethan spoke to me. The way he'd pause before saying, "My mom," when we were around Camille's friends. As if the words carried weight. As if saying them made him vulnerable to judgment he wasn't ready to face. I convinced myself it was nothing. Everyone changes a little when they fall in love. Right? But then came the seating chart. I stopped by Ethan and Camille's apartment one afternoon. I'd brought over a loaf of cardamom banana bread, still warm from the oven. Camille accepted it with a tight smile and immediately placed it on the far end of the kitchen counter like a prop, untouched. They were working on wedding prep, charts, samples, lists, and I noticed my name scribbled in pencil on a corner of a page. Table 14. Right next to the service entrance. Camille's family had the first 3 tables, closest to the dance floor and the main stage. Table 14, I later found out, was where the photographers were sitting. And the DJ's assistant. When I asked about it, Ethan said, "Oh, we figured you'd want a quieter spot. Less noise, more space to relax." He smiled as if he'd just done me a favor. That's the thing about exclusion. It doesn't always come wrapped in malice. Sometimes it wears a polite face and uses soft words. That's what makes it so hard to confront. I remember looking down at the chart and feeling something tighten in my chest. But I didn't push. I said, "Sure, that's fine." I wish I hadn't. After that, it snowballed. Or maybe it always had been snowballing, and I was just finally noticing the cold. One evening, Camille's mother hosted a pre-wedding dinner. It wasn't officially a rehearsal, just a small gathering for the core group, she said. I assumed I'd be included. I mean, I had helped pay for the venue, the florist, and even their monogrammed napkins. But when I called Ethan the day before to ask what time I should arrive, there was a pause. Oh, Camille's mom wanted to keep it really intimate. Just immediate bridal party and their plus ones. I waited. Nothing followed. Not even a flimsy excuse. So I lied. Said I had a catering order anyway. Pretended it didn't sting. That night, I ate a bowl of leftover soup in front of the TV. The volume was low. I didn't want to hear it. I just wanted noise. Sometimes, you start wondering if you're imagining things. If maybe you're too sensitive. If maybe you're making this harder than it needs to be. I used to believe love meant giving the benefit of the doubt. Now I think it just means knowing when the benefit has run out. A week later, I stopped by a boutique to buy Camille a gift for the bridal shower. A small silk robe, light blue, with tiny stitched lilies. I asked the saleswoman to wrap it carefully. That night, I saw the pictures on Instagram. Matching robes for all the women in Camille's family. Her mother. Her sisters. Her cousins. No sign of me. No mention of me. When I asked Ethan, he said, it was more of a girl's thing. They didn't want you to feel out of place. Out of place. That phrase stuck to me like smoke. Not offensive. Just lingering. Just enough to dull the edges of belonging. It made me wonder. When did I become someone they were afraid would ruin the aesthetic? At the dress fitting, I wasn't there either. I found out later they went to a boutique up in the West Hills. Camille wore white, her sisters in champagne. They drank sparkling water and took photos in front of a floral arch. I asked Ethan, quietly, why I hadn't been included. He looked down, fiddled with the buttons on his cuff. You're just, always working, Mom. We didn't want to stress you out. And Camille thought it might feel weird. Her mom and sisters are really close. I nodded. Said I understood. Then went home and cried into a dish towel. You ever find yourself apologizing for not being wanted? That's the part that really burns. Not the exclusion itself, but the way you learn to explain it away for them. The way you soften the blows before they even land. It wasn't until I ran into an old customer at the grocery store that it all really hit. Mrs. Denton. She used to come to Hazel Brew every Tuesday with her husband until he passed. She saw me in the produce section, her arms full of cilantro and oranges. Your boy's getting married. She beamed. You must be over the moon. Mother of the groom, that's a big deal. Bet you've got your dress picked out already. I smiled. Said yes. Said it would be lovely. I didn't tell her I hadn't been invited to the bridal shower. Or the fitting. Or the dinner. I didn't tell her I hadn't even received a formal invitation to the rehearsal. Because what would I say? That the boy I raised to be kind and open now saw me as a liability? That my role had been reduced to silent donor? I walked home with groceries I didn't need, just to keep walking. That night, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by pictures. Ethan in his little Halloween costume. Ethan with Tom, building a kite. Ethan graduating high school. Always smiling. Always looking at me like I was his whole world. And I wondered. When did that little boy disappear? And who replaced him with someone who wanted me invisible? I wasn't angry yet. That would come. But I was beginning to feel the quiet ache of recognition. The kind that settles deep and whispers, this is no longer about oversight. This is erasure. And it's only just begun. It was early May when I finally spoke up. The wedding was 6 weeks away. Every week brought a new invoice. A florist bill. An extra fee for lighting. More money for upgraded chairs. Camille wanted gold-backed Chiavaris because the silver ones felt dated. I'd just written a check for $15,000 for a photo booth with custom lighting and props. Not even a necessity. Just something Camille saw on Pinterest. That afternoon, Ethan came by to pick up another check. I'd made soup. Potato leek, his favorite as a kid. He didn't touch it. He was scrolling through his phone as I set the bowl down. Ethan, I said gently, I think we need to talk. He glanced up. Yeah? Something wrong with the check? No. It's not about the check. It's about everything. He set the phone down, but only halfway. Like he needed it to feel in control. I've given you almost $200,000, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't mind helping. I want you to have a beautiful day. But this is getting beyond what I planned for. He stared at me for a moment. His face unreadable. Then, slowly, his lips pressed into a thin line. Are you seriously complaining right now? About paying for your only son's wedding? I wasn't complaining. I was explaining. There's a difference. But he didn't want to hear it. Do you know what Camille's parents spent on her sister's wedding? $500,000. $500,000, Mom. And I've had to beg you for every little thing. Every single thing. His voice cracked with something between anger and shame. Or maybe just performance. I looked at him. Really looked. This was the boy I'd raised to say thank you. The one who once wrote me handmade coupons for one free hug and I'll do the dishes. Now sitting in my kitchen, in a tailored jacket, talking to me like a bank manager who had failed to deliver. I've given you everything I have, Ethan. Not everything, he said quietly. And I saw it then. The calculation behind his eyes. He had been tallying. He knew about the life insurance. He knew what I had left. That sentence sat between us like a brick wall. Not everything. He wasn't just asking for help. He was claiming a right. I think something inside me splintered at that moment. Not a clean break. A hairline fracture. The kind that creeps along the surface of something you thought was whole. He stood up and reached for the envelope on the counter. This is just the last thing. The venue said we need the upgraded lighting for the evening shots. Lighting. I couldn't speak. My hands were clenched in my lap, pressing into each other for comfort. What happened to you? I didn't ask it out loud. I should have. But some questions are too heavy to say twice. He left without hugging me. The soup cooled on the table. I threw it away that night. Later, I found the list I'd kept in my planner. Each payment marked in blue ink. Notes scribbled in the margins. Dates. Names. Vendors. A kind of map to my undoing. Venue deposit. $50,000. Camille's dress. 24,000, plus alterations. Catering. 35,000. Decor. 19,000. Photography. 12. The planner. 5. Miscellaneous. Another 38. And on the bottom corner, circled twice, in small careful handwriting. Check 4521, 200,000. That wasn't all. There were also the trips. The engagement party. The extra help with their rent that Ethan said was just temporary. Altogether, it added up to nearly $300,000. 300,000. That was what my love had cost me. At least on paper. You ever have a moment where numbers feel louder than words? Like the math of it somehow makes the betrayal feel colder? That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, room to room, turning on lamps, then off again. I stopped in the hallway, where the family pictures hang. Ethan at 5, front teeth missing. Ethan in his prom suit. Ethan in his cap and gown. I had been there for all of it. But now, he didn't want me at the table. He wanted me in the background. Quiet. Invisible. Available only when needed. I sat on the floor in my hallway and cried for a long time. It wasn't a loud cry. Not the kind you see in movies. It was soft. Exhausted. The kind of crying that feels like breathing. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing my place in his life. I used to think that love meant saying yes. That selflessness was strength. That if you give enough, they'll see you. But what happens when the giving only teaches them to expect more? What happens when love, instead of building connection, becomes currency? That's what scared me. Not that I'd run out of money. But that I'd run out of meaning. I didn't know it then. But that moment, in the hallway, with a planner in my lap and my past staring at me from the walls, was the beginning of the end. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. But I would. Soon. It was a Thursday afternoon when the truth finally found its way to me. Lena stopped by after school, just as the sun was settling low over the pine trees outside my kitchen window. She didn't call first, just showed up with her backpack slung over one shoulder and a carton of fresh strawberries from the farmer's market. I was folding laundry at the dining table. The TV was on low. Some baking show where everyone spoke in soft British accents. The kind of background noise that makes an empty house feel less so. Lena placed the strawberries on the counter, unzipped her hoodie, and looked at the scattered wedding invoices still lying open on the table. "You still paying for all this?" she asked, not unkindly. Just curious. She was 16, but had the kind of eyes that made you feel like you couldn't lie. I hesitated. Then nodded. It's what family does. She didn't say anything right away. Just ran her fingers along the edge of one of the papers. Her nail polish was chipped. Electric blue. "Does Ethan know how much this is costing you?" "Of course," I said. "He knows. I've told him." "No," she said. "I mean, does he really know?" I didn't answer. Which was answer enough. She picked up a folded invoice. $25,000 for signature lighting. She blinked. "Last week," she said slowly, "I was at their apartment with my mom. Camille didn't know I was there. She was in the kitchen talking to Ethan. They were laughing. Joking, sort of. I looked up. What did they say?" She glanced at me, nervous. Then steadied herself. "Camille said, after the wedding, we won't need to deal with your mom anymore. That this is the last big ask. Deal with me." That's the phrase that landed hardest. Like I was a stain to scrub out. Lena's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Grandma Claire. I didn't want to tell you, but you deserve to know." She reached for my hand. Hers was warm. Steady. "You've done too much for people who treat you like an obstacle." I don't know what came over me, but I stood up. Walked into the kitchen. Opened the cabinet where I kept the good plates. The ones I'd been saving for company that never came. I took one down. Looked at the floral edge. Then, in one clean motion, I let it fall to the floor. The crash echoed. Sharp. Final. Lena jumped. I didn't. It felt necessary. I sat back down. My heart wasn't racing. It was slowing. Like a storm had passed. Or maybe had just started. I looked at her. Really looked. This young girl with paint on her jeans and too much truth in her eyes. Why do you let them treat you like this? She asked again. But this time, it wasn't a question. It was a mirror. I used to think that sacrifice was the highest form of love. That if you give and expect nothing, that's nobility. But it's not. It's erasure. Quiet. Polite. Permanent. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was still. The kettle clicked as it boiled. I made coffee and poured it into the mug Tom used to love. The one with the faded picture of Crater Lake. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Bank statements. Line by line. Each one bleeding into the next. Total expenses, $197,600. I stared at the number. My hands trembled. Not from fear. From something else. Something like anger. Something like clarity. I had spent almost $200,000 to be humiliated. To be made invisible. To be turned into an inconvenience. What kind of love costs that much? What kind of mother am I, if I keep calling this love? At 6:12 a.m., I called the bank's 24-hour line. When the operator asked for the check number, I didn't hesitate. 4521, $200,000. And the reason for the stop payment? The voice was professional. Unbothered. The services the check was meant to pay for will no longer be needed. It took 11 minutes. 11 minutes to reclaim 30 years of silent swallowing. After I hung up, I looked out the window. The sun had just crested the trees. The light hit the side of the house in gold streaks. The hummingbirds were back. They darted between the feeders like tiny, frantic hearts. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt still. This was not revenge. This was self-respect arriving late, but right on time. You ever have that kind of moment? When something inside you finally says, enough? It doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors. It just closes one gently. And doesn't reopen it. I stood up. Brushed the crumbs off the table. And started to get ready. There was still more to do. This wasn't the end. This was the line in the sand. And I had just drawn it. After I canceled the check, I just sat there. At my kitchen table. In my worn flannel pajamas. Hair unbrushed. A single sock missing. The quiet felt heavier than it should have. Not empty. Just still. Like the moment right before a storm breaks, or right after it's passed. I glanced at the clock. 6:47 a.m. Most people were still asleep. Or just waking up to start a day they didn't know would be important. I knew. The mug of coffee in front of me had gone cold. I took a sip anyway. Bitterness layered on bitterness. I didn't flinch. My phone was face down next to the laptop. No calls yet. But they'd come. I had one more thing to do. I pulled my old address book from the kitchen drawer. The leather was cracked at the edges. Post-it notes peeked out in uneven colors. I flipped through until I found her name. Donna Green. She'd handled Tom's estate years ago. A sharp, clear-eyed woman with short silver hair and the calm energy of someone who knew exactly when to speak and when to stay silent. We'd stayed in touch. Holiday cards. Occasional lunch. She'd told me once, if you ever need to make something official in a hurry, call me. No judgment. I dialed. She answered on the second ring. Claire. Her voice was groggy. I'm guessing this isn't about cookies. No. Sorry to call so early. I need your help. She didn't ask why. Just said, come in at 8. I'll put on the coffee. At 7:40, I pulled into the parking lot of her law office, a converted craftsman house with green shutters and potted herbs by the door. The rosemary smelled strong. Comforting. Donna met me at the door, still in flats and no makeup. Come on in. You look like you've made a decision. I have, I said. And I had. I sat across from her, the sunlight hitting the table in soft patches. I told her everything. The money. The wedding. The words Camille said to Ethan. The way Ethan had counted my dollars like they were his birthright. And Lena. How Lena had been the only one who'd seen me. Really seen me. I want to set up a trust, I said. For her. For college. For whatever future she wants. No strings. Donna didn't blink. Just nodded. Like it all made perfect sense. We went through the forms. The structure. I transferred the funds then and there. Everything that was supposed to go toward the wedding. Every last cent. By 9:15, it was done. The trust belonged to Lena now. A quiet, fierce girl who had more integrity at 16 than some adults I knew. You sure about this? Donna asked as I signed the final line. Absolutely. When I got home, the voicemails had started. 5 missed calls. 2 from Ethan. 1 from Camille. 1 unknown number. 1 from the venue. I didn't listen. Just deleted them all. I made toast. Sliced half an avocado. Sprinkled it with lemon and cracked pepper. I sat at the table and ate it slowly, savoring every bite like it mattered. Because in that moment, it did. I'm not a dramatic person. I don't burn things. I don't scream. I don't throw shoes. But I do make quiet, irreversible choices. I think that's how real change happens. Not with fireworks. With stillness. That afternoon, I folded the navy blue dress I'd bought for the wedding and placed it back in the garment bag. I'd kept the tags on. Something had told me. I laid it across the guest bed. Sat beside it for a minute. It was a lovely dress. Soft chiffon. Tiny pearls at the sleeve hems. I'd chosen it carefully. Something elegant, but not flashy. Something that wouldn't make Camille's mother sneer. It would never be worn now. Not by me. Maybe I'd donate it. Maybe I'd keep it. Not everything needed a conclusion right away. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, my phone had rung 18 times. Ethan's number. Camille's. Camille's mother's. The catering company. The wedding planner. Even the band. I didn't answer. I put my phone on silent and ran a hot bath. Lavender salts. The kind I always bought but rarely used. I soaked for 23 minutes. Counted the small cracks in the ceiling. Let the heat draw out the ache in my shoulders. Afterward, I brushed my hair. Lotioned my arms. Put on fresh pajamas. A soft gray set my sister gave me last Christmas. Then I sat in the living room. Turned off the lights. Lit a candle. The lemon and sage kind. The one I usually saved for guests. And I waited. Not for them. For myself. I used to think motherhood meant always answering the call. Always showing up. Even when you're tired. Even when you're breaking. But that's how I got here. That's how I taught Ethan I would always say yes. Sometimes, silence isn't cold. It's sacred. It's the sound of a woman reclaiming her name. Tomorrow, the chaos would start. But tonight, I had peace. And I knew something with absolute clarity. I wasn't paying for the wedding. And I wasn't asking permission to stop. The morning light slid through my blinds just before 6. Pale. Cold. I lay still for a while, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my son's life. That's what everyone says about weddings, isn't it? But all I felt was stillness. Like the air had paused. Like the house was holding its breath. I got up slowly. My knees stiff. My back a little sore from a restless night. The kind of sleep that doesn't rest you. Only stalls the pain. I made coffee. French press. Strong. No sugar. The first sip scalded my tongue, but I didn't flinch. It reminded me I was awake. Alive. Clear. The kitchen was spotless. I'd wiped every surface the night before. I didn't want to come home to a mess. Or maybe I needed something in my life that felt within my control. On the table were 3 things. My phone. My checkbook. And a photograph. Ethan at age 5. Missing front teeth. Chocolate ice cream smeared across his cheeks. He was grinning, holding a sparkler. It was the 4th of July. He'd been terrified of the fireworks that year, until I held his hand and showed him they were just light and sound. He believed me then. The phone buzzed. I didn't look right away. Just took another sip of coffee and glanced out the window. A squirrel darted along the fence line. The neighbor's wind chimes jingled in the breeze. Distant sounds. Familiar. Calming. Then I picked up the phone. 7 missed calls from Ethan. 4 from Camille. 2 from the wedding planner. 1 unknown number. I put the phone down again. Walked into the bedroom and pulled out the navy blue dress. The one I'd bought 6 weeks earlier. Still pristine in its plastic cover. I laid it across the bed. It wasn't flashy. I'd chosen it for that reason. Simple. Flattering. Elegant enough to not embarrass Camille's family. Modest enough not to draw attention, as Ethan had once phrased it. I ran my fingers along the sleeve. It was smooth. Cool. I could hear Tom's voice in my head. Where the good pearls, Claire? The ones I gave you in Charleston. I opened the drawer. Pulled out the small velvet box. The clasp was slightly tarnished, but the pearls still had that warm sheen. I clipped them on. Looked at myself in the mirror. 68. Lines around the eyes. Hair grayer than not. But something in my posture surprised me. A straightness I hadn't seen in a while. I wasn't going to hide today. Not anymore. By the time I left the house, my phone had rung 12 more times. I didn't answer. I got in the car. Took the long way to the church. Drove past Hazel Brew. The windows were dark. Closed on Sundays. I thought about stopping in, just to sit. Just to breathe. But I kept driving. When I pulled into the church parking lot, it was already filling. Guests in heels and suits floated toward the entrance in clusters. Everyone looked dressed for a photograph. Posture perfect. Smiles ready. I stayed in the car a few minutes. Let the engine tick itself cool. I scrolled through my phone. 47 missed calls. Some from Ethan. Some from Camille. A few from numbers I didn't know. Probably vendors. No voicemails. They didn't want to explain. They wanted to control. I could imagine the panic. The venue calling about a bounced check. The caterers realizing the payment hadn't cleared. The band waiting for confirmation. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. But mostly, I felt quiet. Steady. I opened the car door. The air was crisp. A little windier than expected. My skirt fluttered slightly as I walked. I pulled my cardigan tighter. The church doors were wide open. Music drifted out. Classical. Nothing too emotional. I stepped onto the path leading to the steps, and that's when I saw Ethan. He was standing near the entrance. Hands on hips. Jaw tight. His tuxedo fit perfectly. Hair gelled back. But his eyes were frantic. He spotted me instantly. "Mom, what did you do?" He didn't say hello. Didn't ask if I was okay. Just snapped the words like a leash. "The venue says the check bounced. The florist called me in tears." "What's going on?" I stood there, the crowd brushing past, a few guests throwing glances our way. "I canceled it," I said. His face flushed. The muscles in his jaw clenched. "You what?" "I canceled the payment." "Why?" He hissed. His voice low but sharp. "You're ruining everything." "Am I?" "Yes, you are." There was a beat of silence between us. He stepped closer. Lowered his voice further. "You do this, and you're not coming inside. You're not part of this day. Understand?" I looked at him. Really looked. The man he'd become. The choices he'd made. "You already decided that, Ethan." His mouth opened. Then closed. No words came. A breeze tugged at my scarf. The music inside swelled a little. I adjusted my pearls. Smiled, faintly. And walked past him. Into the building. Because I was not the one who needed to apologize. Not anymore. And I had come to witness the wreckage. Not to stop it. The sanctuary was buzzing. Guests murmured in hushed tones, fanning themselves with printed programs. The smell of lilies was overwhelming, sweet and heavy in the summer air. A string quartet played something soft and classical, almost bored in its precision. I stood near the back, unnoticed for a moment. Just watching. Until Camille saw me. She was standing near the altar, veil lifted, clutching her bouquet like it was a shield. The dress was exactly what I'd imagined, expensive, intricate, flawless in that way things look when they've never been worn twice. Her eyes landed on me and narrowed, a flash of panic behind the mascara. She crossed the room in quick, stiff steps, heels clicking like gunshots against the polished floor. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was tight. Thin. Too controlled to be calm. I looked at her without flinching. "I was invited to the ceremony, remember? That was your generous compromise. You're causing a scene." "Not yet," I said. But I could feel the weight in the room shifting. Eyes turning. Phones starting to come out. Whispers rising like heat. She lowered her voice to a hiss. "You had no right to cancel the check. You embarrassed us." "You mean I embarrassed you by refusing to fund a day I'm not welcome to enjoy?" "You were never supposed to actually come," she said. And there it was. The honesty. I stared at her. Camille with her flawless curls, manicured perfection, trembling with fury. This woman I barely knew, who had reshaped my son into a man who saw his mother as a liability. Ethan appeared behind her, breathless. His tux jacket askew, tie crooked. He looked at me, then at Camille, then back. "We can fix this," he said quickly. "Just write another check. I'll come by tonight. We can backdate it, wire transfer, whatever works." I let the silence stretch. Let him sit in the space he'd created. "You think I'm going to fix this?" "You already ruined it," Camille snapped. "Poor people always do this. Tear down what they can't afford." I blinked. "Poor?" "I paid for everything," I said slowly. "The food. The dress. The venue. The photographer. Even your damn flower wall." And it was true. Every dollar had come from me. Every single thread of this wedding had passed through my hands. Ethan stepped in. His voice low, firm. You think I don't know you've been hoarding Dad's life insurance? Sitting on all that money while I've had to beg you? So that's what this was about. Not gratitude. Not family. Entitlement. It's family money, Mom. I'm your son. I deserve it. My chest tightened. And I realized something right then. Something final. He wasn't ashamed of what he was asking for. He was ashamed of who I was. I took a breath. Let it fill me. Yes, you're my son. Which is why I gave you everything I had. But love isn't alone. And you're not entitled to the rest of me. People were watching now. Leaning in. Some pretending not to, but we all knew the moment had outgrown its corner. A woman I didn't recognize whispered to her husband and pointed. Phones were up. Recordings had begun. Camille's face was red now, her grip on the bouquet like a vice. Think about your future grandchildren, she hissed. Do you want them to grow up knowing their grandmother ruined their parents' wedding? I tilted my head. What do you plan to tell them? That I stopped being your ATM? That I refused to buy my own erasure? Ethan stepped forward. Mom, please. His voice cracked. Just a little. Enough to let something real slip through. I wanted to fit into her world. I didn't know how else. I looked at him. Then you were ashamed of me. He looked away. And that's something no money will fix. He said nothing. Camille turned to one of the ushers, snapping her fingers like she was hailing a cab. Get her out of here. No need, I said. I'm leaving. But Ethan grabbed my wrist. You walk out now, and you'll never see your grandchildren. You'll die alone in that little coffee shop you're so proud of. There it was. The cruelty of someone who thinks they still own you. I pulled my hand away. If that's the kind of father you're going to be, using children as weapons, then maybe staying away is the kindest thing I can do. An usher approached, awkward and unsure. He was maybe 20, acne still fresh on his face. Ma'am. It's fine, I told him. I know the way out. I walked past Ethan. Past Camille. Past the judgmental stares and sideways glances. And out into the sunlight. The wind had picked up. It tugged at my dress and loosened a strand of hair from its pin. Somewhere behind me, someone said under their breath, well, that was dramatic. But I didn't feel dramatic. I felt done. Not broken. Just finished. And that's something different. Because ending something, truly ending it, isn't loud. It's deliberate. And I was finally choosing myself. The church doors shut behind me with a soft thud. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just final. Outside, the sun had climbed high. The kind of summer heat that sits low on your shoulders. I paused on the top step. Let the warmth settle into my skin. Below me, the parking lot buzzed. People in pastel suits and flower print dresses murmured in small clusters. Some checking their phones. Others just staring at the building like it might tell them what to do next. To my right, the wedding coordinator paced back and forth, headset in one hand, clipboard in the other. Her face pinched. She wasn't talking, she was negotiating. I'd seen that expression before. The same one I used when Hazel Brew's plumbing backed up mid-breakfast rush. My phone vibrated in my purse. I didn't check it. Instead, I walked. One foot in front of the other. Calm. Deliberate. Like I had nowhere to be, and everywhere to go. A woman I didn't know glanced up from her sunglasses. Whispered something behind her hand. Someone else lifted a phone. Let them. If people were expecting tears, they were going to be disappointed. At my car, I opened the door, slid into the seat, and closed it gently behind me. The interior was warm. The kind of warmth that usually annoys me. But right then, it felt earned. I sat still. No engine. No radio. Just breath. And then I laughed. Not loud. Not bitter. Just a short breath of disbelief. I had spent almost $300,000 on a wedding I wasn't welcome at. I'd baked the cake, set the table, and been told not to come inside. And now, I'd ruined it. Or, as I'd started to think of it, I'd rescued myself. The phone vibrated again. I pulled it out. 62 missed calls. Ethan. Camille. Her mother. Vendors. Some numbers I didn't recognize. No voicemails. Just the relentless blinking of panic. A text popped up. From Ethan. You better fix this. You're making a fool of yourself. I stared at it for a moment. Then deleted the entire thread. Let them scramble. Let them finally feel the weight of what I'd carried alone. My purse buzzed again. I sighed and reached to silence it. But the name on the screen stopped me. Sarah. My niece. I answered. Aunt Claire, she said. Lena told me what happened. I didn't speak right away. Are you okay? I looked out the windshield. A small child in a blue bow tie was chasing a pigeon across the sidewalk. His mother called after him. Laughed. I will be, I said. I think I already am. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just full. For what it's worth, Sarah said, Mom always said you gave too much. We all saw it. We just didn't know how to help. We do what we think is right in the moment, I said softly. Sometimes it takes time to see what it cost us. She asked if Lena could come by later. She had groceries. And a hug. That sounds perfect, I said. After we hung up, I just sat there. Hands on the wheel. Not driving. Not crying. Just breathing. For years, I'd built a life around someone else's needs. I'd said yes because that's what mothers do. I'd bent so far, I forgot I had bones. But now I remembered. The parking lot was almost empty when I finally started the car. The engine hummed to life, steady and low. I pulled out slowly, past the valet stand where the band's van sat idling. One of the musicians glanced up from his phone. Blinked when he saw me. Then looked away. I didn't look back at the church. There was nothing for me there. No redemption. No closure. Just silence. And expectation. And a ceremony that would happen, or not, without me. On the way home, I stopped at the corner bakery. Bought a lemon tart. The kind Tom used to bring home on Fridays when we were too tired to cook. The girl at the counter complimented my earrings. Vintage, she asked. Almost antique, I smiled. Gift from someone who knew better than I did. At home, the house smelled like lavender and sugar. I changed into soft pants and a loose t-shirt. Pulled my hair back. Set the tart on a plate. Brewed a cup of chamomile tea. Turned on the ceiling fan. And for the first time in months, I ate something sweet without guilt. Later, I sat on the couch and looked at the framed photo on the shelf. Ethan at 10. Laughing mid-bite into a grilled cheese. Tomato soup on the table. Tom behind him, out of focus but present. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just looked. You ever feel the exact second your heart stops asking for permission? That was this. This was that second. And the peace? It didn't shout. It whispered. Finally. Months had passed before they came back. Ethan arrived first, his suit borrowed and stained with nerves. Behind him was Camille cradling a quiet baby, soft pink cheeks, tiny fists curled around nothing yet full of demand. They stood in my doorway. Sundays had always been quiet here. Now the silence was heavy. Mom. He looked small again. I let them in. They stepped into the living room where the quilt I'd made for Tom lay folded over the couch. The curtains were drawn to filter the afternoon light. The house smelled faintly of chamomile and old books. Ethan shifted, clearing his throat. We need to talk. I tilted my head. Okay. Camille adjusted her hold on the baby and smiled wearily. He's Robert. Named after his grandfather. The baby shifted his head toward me. Curious eyes meeting mine. I didn't reach for him. Instead, I picked up a glass of water on the coffee table. It trembled in my hand. So did my heart. Your invitation didn't come with conditions, I said. You always have a house here, a home. When the wedding happened. I understand you thought you were saving me from embarrassment. She nodded. I'm sorry, she said. He was overwhelmed. Under pressure. He couldn't breathe. I noticed she still had her heels on. Even now. Even here. Did you think I was coming to help? To beg? To break? I asked. I didn't. I came because you brought a child who deserves to know his grandmother, with my rough hands, my old stories, my scars. The baby yawned. Hated his diaper, I could tell. Ethan's voice broke. I'm sorry, Mom. So sorry. It wasn't the first time I heard it, but it was the first time it felt real. I put down the glass. Walked past them to the shelf and lifted a photo album. Handed it to them. This is him. That's his first smile. That's his prom night. That's the day he graduated. I've been there. His whole life. He inhaled. I saved that business for him. So he could chase dreams. To build something honest. Robert should know that. She took the album and let him flip through. I retreated to the kitchen. They followed. I called for something to eat. I asked silently. You both look tired. I made turkey sandwiches. Pickled carrots on the side. Weak coffee. We sat at the small table facing each other. The baby slept in his swing. I watched his chest rise and fall. You never asked about me, I said. Even when you were struggling. When Camille's parents cut you off after the wedding fiasco. Ethan looked down at his sandwich. Took a bite. Didn't taste it. That wasn't me, he said. The pride. I was a mess then. I was scared. I nodded. But you did it anyway. I nodded again. I get that being an adult is hard in ways I can't imagine. You've pushed yourself. Worked too much. Tired out. But using a child as a weapon. That's something else. No reply. Just the baby stirring. And then. They stood up slowly. Words unfinished. Grief and regret hovering in the air. He left the house first. She followed. I saw their heels through the window. The baby's head turned back one last time. Bright eyes looked at me. Not angry. Not loving. Just curious. And I realized something. Some lessons can only be learned outside with broken hearts. Some bridges can only be rebuilt by the one who burned them. I sat down, the empty house quiet. I wasn't empty. I was enough. Now I have a choice. The door is only open if I want it to be. That's love with boundaries. And that's where this ends. Or maybe begins. These days, I wake up slower. I let the sun come in gently through the linen curtains. No alarm clocks. No urgent texts. The quiet is my first guest each morning. I make my coffee just the way I like it. Strong, with a splash of oat milk and half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Not because anyone taught me that. Just because I decided one day that I liked it that way. And that decision, mine, small, quiet, matters. The cafe runs just fine without me most days now. I stop by when I want. Not because I have to. Mateo, my manager, sends me photos of the specials. Blueberry muffins stacked in the window. A new lavender cold brew recipe he's proud of. Sometimes I just sit in the corner table with my journal. I watch people come and go. I see mothers juggling strollers and laptops. Teenagers whispering over matcha. An old couple holding hands while sharing a banana scone. No one knows my history here. They just know me as Claire, who always tips well and orders the Earl Grey on rainy days. And I like it that way. Some Sundays, Lena visits. We walk by the water or bake something new from an old cookbook. She asked me once, a few weeks ago, if I hated her father. I paused. No, I said. I don't hate him. But I'm not waiting for him anymore. That answer felt honest. I used to think motherhood meant always being available. Always forgiving. Always pouring without checking if the cup was already dry. But I was wrong. It means showing up when it counts. And sometimes, it means knowing when to step away. I haven't spoken to Ethan since that day in the kitchen. He sends updates now and then. Photos of Robert, sometimes. A message on my birthday that just says, "Hope you're well." I reply when I feel like it. Sometimes I don't. That's new for me. Giving myself permission to not engage when it costs more than I have. Do I miss him? Of course. But not the version of him I knew at the end. I miss the boy who loved dinosaurs. Who made breakfast in bed for Mother's Day with soggy toast and too much jelly. Who once told his kindergarten teacher that I was his hero because I could fold a fitted sheet perfectly. That boy might come back someday. Or not. Either way, I've stopped waiting by the door. Because silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes, it's survival. And now, I've made peace with the space between us. There's no ceremony for this kind of healing. No gold medal. No final act of reconciliation with swelling music in the background. There's just the daily work. Of choosing yourself. Of setting the table for one and still lighting the candle. Of folding the laundry and humming along to a song you used to skip. Of looking in the mirror and not needing to apologize for the woman staring back. You know what I've learned? Love isn't measured by how much you give. It's also measured by how much of yourself you're willing to keep. I've given enough. Now I build. A garden, mostly herbs. Some cherry tomatoes. A new recipe folder on my computer called Just for Fun. A book club with 2 women from the farmer's market. A chair near the window where I sit in the afternoon with a blanket and nothing urgent to do. My life is small again. But it feels wide. I'm not angry anymore. I'm aware. And in that awareness, there's room to breathe. To be soft. To be still. Maybe one day Robert will come looking for stories. When he does, I'll be ready. Not with blame. With truth. With memory. With enough love to say, you come from strong. Even if you were born in silence. So yes. I'm alone now. But I'm not lost. Not broken. Not invisible. I'm here. And that's enough.